Part 83. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 851. A group of people walked into Kowloon Walled City at night. The Kowloon Walled City at night has an even more eerie feel than during the day. Every household had their doors tightly closed, and the smell of incense still filled the air. Occasionally, a huge mouse will flash past in front of everyone in the corner. If you listen carefully, you can hear screams, beatings and scoldings, the cries of children, and the hustle and bustle of drinking. The mixture makes people feel real and a little unreal. Su Tong took out the indescribable manful little figure in his hand. Everyone, be careful. No matter what sound you hear or what you see, run away as soon as possible and don't fight with the other party. Guo Xiang nodded. Although they were the deputy group of Momin, they also had a lot of information about the cave. They knew that once they entered the cave, they must follow the rules of the cave. The more powerful the god is, the more rules there are in the cave. One wrong move may put you in jeopardy. Su Tong took a deep breath, and after activating the dream walk, he saw the doll in his hand emitting a gray light, and then the light quickly spread to the surroundings. But Su Tong and others did not enter the cave immediately, but vaguely heard something. Front. Su Tong looked at the corridor ahead and led everyone forward. As they gradually entered the corridor, the original noise around them became smaller and smaller. Gradually, everyone discovered that the originally brightly lit Kowloon Walled City now had no lights. Gu Zibai glanced back and found that there was an empty world behind him, and the surroundings were eerily quiet. But when he turned around and looked ahead, he was suddenly startled. Where are the people? Su Tong, the eldest princess, Maida, and others who were originally with him all disappeared, and the entire corridor was empty with nothing. Head. Gu Zibai tried to shout. But no one responded in the corridor, so he could only try to call Su Tong in the team channel. As a result, Gao Zhou's voice was heard after shouting, "Old Bai! Old Bai, are you coming in?" "Yes, Lao Gao, where are you?" Gu Zibai looked around and found that his current location should be on the south side of the 6th floor, so he asked while walking forward. "We are at the corner on the north side of the 4th floor. Don't come here. This place is a bit troublesome. Find a place to hide first. Don't run around." Gao Zhou's words were hurried, as if he was in some difficulty at the moment. Gu Zibai wanted to help, but he didn't dare to act rashly after hearing Gao Zhou's words. He and Gao Zhou returned to his hometown in western Hunan before, and he had a deeper understanding of Gao Zhou, and knew that there must be a reason why Gao Zhou did not let him come. Just when he was about to try to find Su Tong and others, he suddenly felt something behind him for no reason. He suddenly turned around and saw that there was nothing but darkness in the empty corridor. Seeing this, Gu Zibai took out his Wu hook from the prop book, held it in his hands and walked forward cautiously. Da-da-da. Looking up, I saw drops of water seeping out along the cracks in the house above my head, forming into droplets as big as beans, and dripping on the ground. I don't know how long this leak has been leaking, and it has formed a large patch on the ground. Puddles. The heads probably haven't come in yet. I'll find a place to hide first, and then I'll find a way to meet them after they come in. Gu Zibai was thinking about countermeasures, but suddenly felt the sense of voyeurism getting stronger and stronger. It feels like this again. Gu Zibai did not look back and continued walking forward as if nothing had happened. However, with a glance from the corner of his eye and through the reflection of the water under his feet, he saw a black shadow above his head following quietly behind him. Gu Zibai frowned slightly when he saw the black figure. The black figure was crawling upside down in the corridor like a spider, moving quietly, taking every step with special caution. Seeing this, Gu Zibai calmed down, pretended not to notice, and continued walking forward. With every step he took, the shadow quietly followed and wriggled forward a few steps. Gu Zibai walked to the corner of the intersection, and the Wugo in his hand began to exude an imperceptible murderous aura. Closer. With the reflection of Wugo's mirror, Gu Zibai was ready to take action. However, just when he was ready to go, the shadow suddenly trembled slightly, turned around and ran away without looking back. Eh? Why did you run away? Did you find me? Gu Zibai was caught off guard by the shadow's move. He suddenly turned around and found that the shadow had disappeared. Looking at the shadows hastily escaping back, Gu Zibai suddenly felt a bad feeling in his heart. A chill came over him, as if something was heading towards him. Seeing this, Gu Zibai took out the evil god pointer and took a look in his hand. He saw the white needle on the pointer began to beat rapidly. Gu Zibai followed the pointer and stuck his head out of the corner, squinting and looking inside. I saw a woman standing in the corridor. The woman's body was covered with yellow charms, and her face was covered by a white cloth. What was even weirder was that the woman's arms were penetrated by thick iron nails, so that her hands could only be raised in the air. A shrine wrapped in red cloth was placed on the woman's arm. As the woman moved forward slowly, the surrounding space seemed to begin to twist and collapse. Every time she walked to a door, the woman stopped and put the shrine on her arm. Aim at the portal. After a while, the door was opened, and 4 figures walked out of it, a man, a woman, and 2 children. They looked like a family of 4. The 4 people looked dull, facing the shrine in front of them, kneeling on the ground respectfully, and chanting something in their mouths, like devout believers worshipping. Is this the shrine mentioned in the mission? Gu Zibai clenched the Wugo in his hand, and began to wonder in his mind whether he could destroy the shrine within 10 steps if he made a sneak attack. He has improved greatly this time. In addition, after bathing in the yin-yang spring in the Netherland mountain, his physical body has exceeded the limit of martial arts. He has reached a martial arts body that even an enlightened master can still fight even if he loses. Furthermore, martial arts are strong and righteous, and it is precisely this kind of evil nemesis that may not have no chance of being attacked by a sneak attack. Thinking of this, Gu Zibai already had some thoughts in his heart that he was eager to try. But when he stuck his head out and looked out again, the strange scene in front of him made his scalp tingle. I saw the red cloth wrapping the shrine squirming a few times, and a grey-white palm stretched out from the shrine. The white skin was covered with various strange spells in blood-red writing. The moment the palm stretched out, the entire corridor the temperature immediately began to drop rapidly. With just a gentle grab in front of the 4 people, the bodies of the family of 4 began to twist. The skin and flesh on their bodies were peeled off, and the blood and bones were twisted together. The 4 faces let out desperate wails and were forcibly spliced together. Together. Together, together, family, always together. 4 faces were twisted and spliced into one face, laughing maniacally. The laughter was mixed with the desperate cry of the child, the heart-rending scream of the mother, and the crazy roar of the father. In the blink of an eye, a monster covered in blood shadow was forcibly fabricated by this strange hand. What the hell is this? Even though Gu Zibai was well informed, he couldn't help but feel his scalp tingling when he saw this scene. When he looked at the shrine again, he already had a strong murderous intention in his heart. It is said that people are not afraid of gods but ghosts. Because in the impression of most people, God represents goodness and is a talisman that protects all living beings. However, they do not know that God is terrifying, countless times more terrifying than those evil ghosts. Gu Zibai frowned, already thinking about what to do next. This shrine was far scarier than he thought. Just when he was about to retreat carefully and find a place to hide, on the face of the monster that the family of 4 had turned into, one of his eyeballs suddenly tilted, and he glanced at Gu Zibai hiding in the corner. Oops! Their eyes met, and a crazy, bloodthirsty, and twisted thought followed the other person's line of sight and struck into Gu Zibai's heart. Ah! The monster let out a low roar, and its claws made of flesh and blood tore open a thick layer of cement on the ground and threw it at him. Boom! In an instant, the wall was penetrated, and the power of the piece of cement was comparable to that of a cannonball that directly penetrated the wall at the corner. If Guzibai hadn't acted quickly, a great master would have been severely injured at this time. Guzibai dodged the attack, but before he could look back, a feeling that made the hairs on his body stand up swept through his body. Guzibai didn't dare to look back, he just glanced behind him through the reflection of the Wugo sword in his hand. Just one glance made Guzibai's whole body go cold, and an unprecedented fear made his scalp numb. I saw that the shrine on the woman's arm had been torn open at some point, and a face that could not distinguish between male and female was staring at him full of resentment. The whites of his eyes were no longer visible, and his pupils were filled with boundless resentment and despair. He just glanced at the shadow, and his muscles almost froze in place. Fortunately, Guzibai had an unshakable determination to enter the martial arts, lowered his head and ran forward quickly. He was extremely fast, but the roar behind him was getting closer and closer. The giant creature with its whole body covered in blood and flesh made a strange cry. Amidst the strange scream full of malice, the place it passed was like being forcibly bulldozed. Just as scary. Guzibai did not dare to take action easily. He was not afraid of this monster, but the shrine brought great pressure to him. The eyes in the shrine flashed back in his mind, as if all the evil thoughts in the world were gathered inside. He was a completely evil god. He didn't want to get entangled with this monster, for fear of being caught by the monster in the shrine, but running away like this there was no other way. This monster looked like a thick-skinned human shield. It was unrealistic to resolve the battle in a short time. If he keeps running like this and this monster is chasing him, it will make too much noise. Don't provoke anything else by then, and he will be in even more trouble. We have to find a way to get rid of him. When Guzibai saw the stairs going up and down in front of him, his mind moved and he had a plan. He deliberately slowed down to let the monster get closer to him, but he still couldn't catch him. When he ran straight to the stairs, he jumped down the stairs. The moment his feet landed, he heard the roar of the monster behind him. The monster's huge body jumped down from the stairs, with a twisted smile on its face. Come! Get out of here! Guzibai suddenly turned around and waved his hands at the same time. Taking advantage of the inertia of the monster that could not change its direction when it jumped up, he poured his martial arts will into his fists and aimed at the monster's chest to hit it. Immediately, a thick shock wave surged out from both fists. After hitting the monster's chest, under the push of Guzibai, it was directly pushed away. After knocking open the glass of the corridor behind him, the monster's face showed anger and anger. Unwilling to do so, he fell downstairs. Seeing the monster falling down the stairs, Guzibai could not help but let out a long breath, fearing that it would no longer be able to catch up with him for a while. But just as he was about to get up and go downstairs, when he turned around, his pupils suddenly shrank, and he saw a whole body at the top of the stairs. The figure shrouded in white cloth was standing in front of him holding a small leather drum. There are 2 more updates tonight. Let me have a meal first. Infinite script killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 852. Guzibai was dumbfounded now. He had heard Su Tong say how powerful the 2 guys, one black and the other white, were, so he immediately turned around and ran away when he knew it was something he couldn't handle. Just as she turned around, before she could walk out of the stairs, a particularly strong fragrance came, making Guzibai feel alert and pause in her steps. A hand suddenly stretched out from the blind spot on the side, with silk-like black objects floating on the grey-white palm, which was full of curses and malice. If Guzibai hadn't stopped and stepped out with one foot, he might have been caught by this hand. They say panic is followed by rage. Guzibai's pupils tightened, and a sense of fear came over him, but it aroused Guzibai's ferocity, and he almost instinctively punched the wall in the blind spot in front of him. The moment the fist hit, a layer of golden light covered Guzibai's body, exuding a powerful aura of the most rigid and sunny. Martial Saint. Spend 800 script points to enter the Martial Saint state. All martial arts skills will be temporarily improved by add 3. In the Martial Saint state, the physical strength will be increased by 100%, and the martial arts thoughts will cause 3 times the lethality. Duration, 60 seconds. Cooling time, 30 hours. He punched the entire wall into powder without any reservation. With the blessing of the martial saint, the terrifying power of the punch was like a golden lion slamming into the woman holding the shrine behind the wall. Maybe even the evil god in the shrine didn't expect the power of this human being to be so amazing. The woman holding the shrine was caught off guard and was knocked away by Guzibai's fist. Hoo-hoo! The woman fell to the ground, and the white cloth covering her face flew up, revealing a very delicate face, but this face made people feel terrible. The eyes, ears, mouth, and nose have all disappeared. Apart from a delicate outline, almost no organs can be seen on this face. After Guzibai succeeded with one move, he did not dare to continue pursuing the victory, but ran away. On the one hand, he found that although his fist knocked the woman away, the woman was not injured, and the shrine was unscathed. What's even worse is that he heard footsteps at the bottom of the stairs. It was obvious that the guy covered in white cloth had already gone upstairs. Even though the other person's speed was not fast, he was already beating the leather drum in his hand. As the drum beat sounded, his muscles began to move uncontrollably. Run! Guzibai only had this thought in his mind. When Su Tong told him how terrifying the cave was, Guzibai thought it was a bit exaggerated. It wasn't until this moment that I truly realized how suffocating the feeling of approaching death was. As he ran, he shouted in the team channel, "I encountered a shrine and a skin drum ghost. They are chasing me. Is there anything I can do? Where are you?" Surprisingly, it was Su Tong who answered him this time. "Boss, you guys came in? I'm on the 6th floor. 6th floor. Su Tong on the other end was startled. He didn't expect that Guzibai was actually on the floor. He raised his head and looked up to see that the surrounding area was covered with gray. Even if Su Tong had clairvoyance, he could only barely see the 5th floor. It turned out that when they entered, they walked down the stairs, but everyone seemed to enter the cave at a different floor. Now they were on the 1st floor, with only him and the eldest princess around. This guy, Maida, didn't even know where he had gone. Moreover, the Kowloon walled city is extremely large, and there is more than just this one building. Su Tong is not sure that the 6th floor Guzibai mentioned is the building in front of them. Find a way to hide first. These guys don't seem to take the initiative to come in and attack. Good. Guzibai couldn't care too much at the moment. He took out the evil god pointer and activated the skill mortal. After running quickly, he saw that the red needle in the pointer box trembled slightly, then the needle turned and pointed behind him. What do you mean? You want me to run back? Guzibai looked at the pointer and couldn't help but curse in his heart, do you think I didn't die fast enough? Complaints are complaints, but Guzibai thought for a moment and felt that there should be nothing wrong with the pointer, so he immediately changed direction and started running back. Just after running 2 steps, an oncoming black figure suddenly collided with Guzibai face to face. Haiying was obviously startled by Guzibai's sudden turn back. He did not expect that Guzibai would turn back suddenly. You again? Guzibai was also surprised. She thought this guy had left, but he didn't expect that he was still following him. When the black shadow saw this, he turned around and ran away, but how could Guzibai let him get his wish this time? He jumped up and rushed forward, if I can't beat those toys, I can't beat you. As he spoke, a fist came out, pointing directly at the black shadow's face. Seeing Guzibai's fist covered with a layer of faint golden light, Haiying's face darkened slightly, and he quickly formed a seal with his hands. Hyman 36 paths, bind. Two black shadows emerged from around Guzibai and quickly bound Guzibai. But the black shadow obviously underestimated Guzibai. The martial arts will penetrated his whole body, and there was a layer of golden light flowing on his body. He was not afraid of the black shadow restraint technique. Before the black shadow touched his arm, Guzibai waved his arms. Huge the fist force immediately shattered the black shadow, and at the same time he punched down, so that the black shadow was caught off guard and could only dodge in embarrassment. Boom! This punch made the whole building tremble. I have to say that the quality of this building is really good. After such a heavy punch, it was not penetrated. Idiot! The black shadow looked at Guzibai's fist, knowing that he had encountered a tough fight, and formed a seal with his hands. Dark clone. Suddenly the black shadow in front of him was divided into three, and at the same time he pulled out a sword and swung it up and down. The sword technique was strange and exquisite, like a kite flying through the forest, piercing up and down, intertwining into a network of knives, and shrouding Gu-11 in the white sun. It turned out to be a little devil, so I can't let you go. Guzibai perked up, but he did not summon Wugo. Instead, he used a pair of fleshy palms to fight 1 against 3. He saw fists, palms, fingers, legs, and movements changing endlessly, swiftly, and strangely, like kites flying through the sky, as fast as thunder and lightning flashed back and forth in the light of the sword, and his movement was like a ghost. Even though the opponent had a weapon, it could not hurt him at all, and he was able to do so with ease. Feng Mo8 Chaos Slashes. Seeing that he was at a disadvantage even though he was outnumbered by 3, the shadow became anxious. A black mist surged out of his body, and then an evil aura emerged from the sword in his hand. In an instant, the void tore apart, and countless knife shadows formed a wall of knives that was difficult to distinguish with the naked eye and attacked. Little tricks. Seeing the other party's killing move, Guzibai sneered instead, and saw 2 wu hooks appearing in his hands. He waved his hands like dragons and snakes flying in the air, and the air made countless sharp whistles. Bang bang bang. In an instant, the sound of countless weapons clashing echoed in the corridor. The 2 wu hooks were like flying dragons, opening and closing with great strength. After 3 or 2 rounds, as Guzibai revealed his murderous intent, he twisted the wu hook in his hand, thrust out at a weird and clever angle and slid sideways at a rapid speed. A huge force suddenly came like an overwhelming force. The next moment, a human head flew up. The black shadow's head rolled on the ground, his eyes widened, as if he didn't understand how Guzibai could see through his true identity before he died. My skills are good, but my basic skills are terrible. Gu-11's white pupils overflowed with golden light. Although the martial arts golden pupils could not directly see through the opponent's true identity. But he can tell the subtle difference between the clone and the original body when taking action. Even if it's not much, just a little bit, it's enough for Guzibai, who has been practicing martial arts since childhood and is extremely obsessed with martial arts. Dong dong dong. At this time, the sound of a leather drum sounded in the corridor, and Guzibai finally remembered that he was still running for his life. He grabbed the prop book on the little devil and quickly opened it and looked through it. As a result, I really found a good thing in the prop book. Cloak of the Servant of the Evil God. This is the cloak awarded by the evil god to his most loyal slaves. Wearing it will make you be regarded as a slave in the eyes of the evil god. Passive Skill 1, Shadow of the Evil God. The wearer is able to hide himself in the shadows, reducing his presence by 50%. And will not be actively attacked by the evil god slaves. Nice one. This was exactly what he needed now. Although he didn't know where the little devil got it, he accepted it without mercy. Guzibai quickly put on the cloak, and his figure was temporarily hidden in the shadows. Because this was a hunting script, he was able to draw an extra prop card. After Gu Zibai quickly glanced around, he suddenly focused his eyes and found that there was another thing in the prop book. The master key to Kowloon Walled City. In this place where dragons and snakes are mixed, lockpicking is a necessary skill for everyone. This master key can open all the doors in Kowloon Walled City. Note, remember to knock before opening the door, otherwise when you open the door, there may be a 300-kilogram gay waiting for you inside. Just right. Gu Zibai picked up the key, glanced at the increasingly clear figure in the corridor in the distance, turned around and ran away without looking back. At the same time, a group of people were arriving by car outside the Kowloon Walled City. An old man in the car was smiling and talking to the three people in front of Sakuragi Sime about the various wonderful uses of onmyoji in Japan. Sakuragi Sime and the others were particularly fascinated by what they heard. Being able to receive guidance from the onmyojin shrine ancestor, Mansai Musashi-gen, was definitely an extremely rare benefit for them. However, just as the three of them were getting excited, a harsh warning sound suddenly came from their ears. Warning. Motasaburo Shimiya has been killed, and all your points will be reduced by 20%. Warning. There is only one proton left in the cave. If all your protons are killed, a severe punishment will be randomly imposed on you. There is only one proton left on your side. The risk is extremely high. You can adopt a voting system and send one member into the cave to replenish protons. Only one person. Seeing the prompts coming from the prop book, Sakuragi Haruaki and others' expressions suddenly turned ugly. There is another update tonight, which is to make up for yesterday's update, but it is almost 11 o'clock now, so the next update should be in the early morning. Don't wait any longer, go to bed and watch again tomorrow morning. Good night. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 853. Buzz. Su Tong opened the door and saw an empty room with no trace of human habitation. I took a look at the house number and wondered if it was a coincidence. The number in the house number was quite auspicious, 404. This is it. Su Tong took the eldest princess into the door. Then with a pinch of his fingers, the large piece of yellow paper quickly rotated in front of Su Tong after activating the paper control. Following Su Tong's thoughts, two paper figures of human height were soon ready. In order to take care of the mood of the two bosses, Su Tong also specially put on brand new clothes for the two paper figures. After the paper man was ready, Su Tong wrote his birthday and birth date on the back of the paper man, mixed his hair with sesame oil, and stuck it on the paper man's shoulders and forehead according to the master's instructions. After doing this, Su Tong put the incense case away and asked in the team channel, Gaozhou, Laobai, Wuji, what's going on with the three of you now? Who needs support? Head, Wuji fell asleep, and I watched over him. Now we are trapped on the 4th floor and it is difficult to get out, but we don't plan to go out now. Gaozhou responded quickly. Is he asleep? Su Tong confirmed this question to Gaozhou again. Yes, we exchanged a special prop in the store here. Through this prop, we can enter and shuttle freely here, but the price is that we need to fall asleep for 3 days. We relied on this prop to enter this room and hide. It's not difficult to get out again, but it will be troublesome if you want to come back. Gaozhou roughly described their current situation to Su Tong. There is a completely enclosed house in the left corner of the 4th floor. This house has no door, only one window, and it is in a remote location, so it is very safe to hide inside. The only bad thing is that there is an altar in their room. I don't know what it is for. It feels quite bluffing. Now that Chang Wuhan has fallen asleep, Gao Zhou needs to guard him. Moreover, it is safer to hide inside than outside, so Gao Zhou won't plan to come out for a while. When Su Tong heard this, it was a solution. Otherwise, this place was so dangerous and they couldn't escape. It would be really risky. Then he asked Gu Zibai again, and Gu Zibai said that he was still on the 6th floor. However, he killed a Japanese and obtained 2 props, which he is now hiding in a room. Boss, I feel like those 2 weird things are still on the 6th floor, but I don't know exactly where they are. I'll wait and see what happens and call you if necessary. Okay, if you can't hold on any longer, just jump down and I'll pick you up on the 1st floor. After Su Tong signaled Gu Zibai to be careful, he ended the team chat. He wondered what was going on with Guo Xiang and the others now. The pager has no signal here at all, otherwise we can meet them then. He took another look at the paper man in front of him, and it seemed that it was not the right time to summon the 7th and 8th masters. After all, if we invite the 7th master and the 8th master here now, it will not be a good thing if we scare the snake. The paper man will stand here first, and when he encounters those dirty things again, he will seduce them. When the time comes, he will invite the 7th master and the 8th master to come out. Wouldn't it be great to take out these demons and evil gods in one pot? Ready. The eldest princess stood guard outside the door. At this moment, her hands had returned to their original state. She took out the bracelet given to her by her master's wife from her waist and put it on again. Su Tong nodded and saw the table in the hands of the eldest princess. He couldn't help but think of the words of the 2 old Taoist priests from Chunyang Palace, there is half of the Zhuoang Sutra on top. If you need the second half, wait until you return this time, how about I get it for you? The eldest princess was startled when she heard this, then a smile broke out on her face, the corners of her scarlet lips raised slightly. If you let me take a bite, it will bring me more benefits than this Zhuoang Jing. After saying that, the eldest princess felt helpless, but in your current state, I can't say anything, otherwise this place would be just right. The eldest princess looked around, feeling both regretful and excited. If Su Tong had not entered the 5 declines of heaven and man, she might not be able to help but hold him in her arms and take a deep breath. The corner of Su Tong's mouth twitched, and he suddenly felt that it might not be a bad thing if the 5 powers of heaven and man were depleted. Let's go, Lao Bai just said that he is hiding now, let's take this opportunity to take a walk and have a look. Now that Su Tong has the confidence, he is naturally not afraid of encountering those evil gods again. He even has a little expectation in his heart, wishing he could attract a few more evil gods. You still have to be careful. This place is much more complicated than I thought. The eldest princess saw through Su Tong's little thoughts, poked Su Tong's head with her slender fingers, and warned him not to take it lightly. Do you know much about Dong Tian? Su Tong looked at the eldest princess's rare serious expression and asked. In fact, he didn't know much about Dong Tian, but he seemed to know the eldest princess very well. Do you still remember my Mr. Yang? You mean Qin Tianjian? Yes, that's the cave, but it's just a man-made cave. The 2 of them walked along the corridor while talking about cave heaven. There are several kinds of cave heaven. Among them is a man-made cave, which is where the eldest princess originally lived. It can be created with powerful objects, huge resentment, and formations. But this kind of cave requires huge financial and material resources, and even human lives to complete. Because this kind of place is too complicated, and the cave created can easily produce evil spirits, it is a forbidden technique. The cave where the eldest princess lived was a hole filled with the lives of 600 people. In addition, several Longhu Taoists worked together to cast spells and spent an unknown amount of money to create the artificial cave. Then there are the natural caves, which are often referred to as the blessed land of caves. Because it is a natural treasure land, it is a special cave that is finally formed by the energy of heaven, earth, sun, moon, mountains, rivers, and dragon veins. There are many such caves, and there are even many treasures of heaven and earth, so they are called the blessed land of caves. Finally, there is the cave in front of us, which is a world created by the gods through the power of their own divine personality. The stronger the spirit is, the stronger the cave it creates. For example, the fairy world that Su Tong once visited is called the 33 Heavens. In fact, strictly speaking, it is also a cave heaven, but it is more special. Every day implies the laws of Shinto and heaven. But there is a drawback. Once the cave is broken, the godhead will be shattered immediately. Even a god will be dead by then. Of course, if that time comes, the world will probably be in chaos. When the eldest princess said this, Su Tong knew more about Dong Tien. While the two were talking, they vaguely saw a light on in front of them. The dim lights here are particularly dazzling, but they also give people a warm sense of security. Under the lights, a small shop is vaguely visible. Hoki Grocery Store. The shop is brightly lit, with a simple and clean facade. Through the glass, you can see the store-like decoration inside, making this shop look out of place here. This should be the points store that Gao Zhou and the others mentioned, right? With curiosity, Su Tong pulled the eldest princess over. As a result, as soon as she approached the light outside the gate, the eldest princess was repulsed by a force. She was stunned for a moment, and then shook her head at Su Tong as if feeling something. This place seems to be protected by some rules. I can't enter. Go. Are only players allowed to enter? Su Tong secretly guessed in his heart. But this seems to make sense. This store is specially prepared for players. Whether it is the princess or the characters in the script world, they cannot see the store at all and cannot enter it. Wait for me here. If there is any danger, run to room 404. After Su Tong told the eldest princess, he continued to walk inside. He wanted to see what the store was like. Ding. You have entered a special player area. You can only stay in this area for 15 minutes a day. If you exceed the time limit, you will be charged 30 script points per second until you leave. Ding. Players cannot use prop abilities in special areas, and combat damage cannot be done here. Hearing the prompt, Su Tong was more sure of the special nature of the store and walked into the store. Welcome to Hiki Grocery Store. Is there anything you need? A clerk stood behind the counter and looked at Su Tong with a smile. Is there anything special here? It's my first time here and I want to know about it. Su Tong looked at the clerk. The distinctive modern clothes made the clerk look very out of place in this script world. It was as if a large group of actors were filming a costume drama, and they were forgetting themselves during the filming. When the camera turned, they found an extra actor wearing short sleeves and shorts, sitting on a dragon chair with a cigarette in his hand and eating a box lunch. You can look at the list. Some of the items on it have already been marked with prices, and some have not been marked with prices. Things with marked prices can only be bought according to the price. For items without marks, we can slowly discuss it. The clerk handed Su Tong a manual with a list of items in the grocery store, which listed the entries for these props in detail. Su Tong knew that time was precious, so after glancing at it one by one, he pointed at the items on the list, which were very strange. For example, a piece of yellow incense actually requires 200 personal points to purchase. And this was still a starting price. Su Tong's eyes quickly spotted an item tightly wrapped in red thread. The outline of a human figure could be vaguely seen. The price of this item was actually 20,000 points. And those items without price tags are even weirder. They have all kinds of strange abilities, and these abilities are all from the underworld. Among them, Su Tong saw the borrowed corpse resurrection scroll. According to the explanation of the entry on the list, this thing can allow the souls of the dead in the cave to temporarily leave the cave and return to the earthly world through the method of borrowing corpses and reviving souls. But there is a condition: the person who borrows the corpse to resurrect the soul will temporarily lose the ability of 2/3 of the prop book. It seems that Mao Suifeng was able to be resurrected because of the use of this item. Infinite script killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 854. The exchange price for this thing is not cheap. 3,000 team points are required. Su Tong continued to look down. Evil soul incense can lead the souls of the dead within 100 miles into the cave world after being lit. Maleful tumor, the tribute eaten by the evil god, is full of crazy malice. Nightmare bone ring. When you wear this ring, you can enter the dream state at any time. Black diary. It is said that as long as the enemy's name is written in it, he will die the next day. Wandering soul whetstone. This is a whetstone filled with curses, which can give your weapon the ability to kill evil gods. Su Tong looked at the contents on the list. Most of these items did not have prices marked, and the entries for each item were very simple. They only marked the above abilities, but there was no detailed content. This can't help but make Su Tong feel like after entering the mall, the shopping guide will only praise the benefits of the products, but will not mention the disadvantages of the products. I want this whetstone. Su Tong pointed to the bottom item on the list. The pure yang sword could not harm those monsters last time. Su Tong estimated that it was due to some kind of rules. Maybe this whetstone was the key. The clerk nodded and looked at Su Tong. What are you going to use to pay? Su Tong tentatively placed a piece of money on it. He wanted to try to see if hard currency like money could work here. When the clerk saw the money handed over by Su Tong, his eyes suddenly lit up and he took out a scale from under the counter. He placed the whetstone on the scale, and then placed the money on the other end of the scale. As the whetstone gradually rose slowly, an embarrassing scene appeared for the clerk. The weight of the whetstone was unable to lift Ming Chao. It was as if the weight of this ghost note alone was several times heavier than the whetstone. Please wait a moment. When the clerk saw this, his expression suddenly became strange. He turned around and took out a brand new whetstone from the container on the side. This whetstone exuded a strong malice. When Su Tong looked at it, he found that there were many evil ghosts entangled on the whetstone. This is not what I want. Seeing that the clerk was about to put the whetstone on the scale, Su Tong frowned and said, "This is something better, many times stronger than this whetstone." In order to show that he was not lying, the clerk showed Su Tong all the entries on the whetstone. Blood curse whetstone. It can add an evil curse to the weapon, causing great damage to the evil god. Number of uses, 5/5. Duration, 30 minutes. Cooling time, 1 hour. Seeing the entry for this item, Su Tong couldn't help but be a little surprised. After nodding towards the clerk, he saw the clerk put the whetstone on the scale. As the scale shook slightly, the end where the money was placed was slightly raised, but it only rose a little and then stopped. Beads of sweat appeared on the clerk's forehead. He had never taken on such a big deal in such a long time since he had been in business. So the clerk could only take out another blood curse whetstone from the cabinet and put it on top while Su Tong watched. 2 blood curse whetstones barely made the scales gradually level. It looked a little reluctant, so the clerk could only put the wandering soul whetstone that Su Tong was initially interested in together with it. Let the scales be completely balanced. Your merchandise. The clerk brought the 3 whetstones to Su Tong, and then carefully put away the ghost note. Su Tong originally just had the attitude of giving it a try, but he didn't expect that Ming Chao would still be of great value here. Immediately put the list in front of the clerk, and then took out a wad of money in the clerk's extremely shocked eyes. Pack them all. There is no way, it's not that I am too high profile, but that I am too rich. The usefulness of Ming Chao was far beyond his expectation, and Su Tong once again realized the power of money. Sure enough, the ancestors said it right, wealth can guide the gods, and I will not deceive you if you are honest. In addition to the items on the list, there are many hidden props in the shop. These props are usually not sold, but they had to be taken out today because Su Tong gave too much. It is completely impossible to complete the transaction with just ordinary commodities. Su Tong, on the other hand, refused to accept anyone who came, and put the money in his hand on the scale. Seeing the clerk in a hurry, he could only urge him. After all, I can only stay here for 15 minutes. Fortunately, the clerk was quick enough, and all the big and small bags were hung on the scale. In the blink of an eye, he took out almost all the goods in the store, but in the end he could only exchange half of the money in Su Tong's hand. Sorry, the props are no longer available in the store. If you still need them, please come back in 2 weeks. Oh, 2 weeks from now, so there will be no inventory left in your store within 2 weeks, right? Su Tong confirmed again and again. Yes, I may have to close for a while after today. The clerk was also very happy. He was so happy to see such a big deal in such a shabby place. He almost woke up laughing. This answer is exactly what Su Tong wants. There are many props here that he can't use at all, but if he doesn't use them, Gao Zhou and the others may be able to use them. Even if Gao Zhou doesn't use them, they can't let those Japanese players get them. You are the most generous customer I have ever contacted. This is my business card. The clerk also gave Su Tong a business card. If you want to make transactions elsewhere, you can use this business card to find the nearest store. As long as you submit this business card, I can give you another 30% discount. Su Tong held it in his hand and took a look. The material of the business card reminded him of the invitation card he received when he first came into contact with the script studio. I don't know what font the text on the business card is in, but when I look at the business card, the text on the business card seems to automatically change, and the meaning emerges in my mind. Wanja Trading Company. Sales Manager, 30% off. Special Skills, VIP. When you need it, you can use this prop card to find the entrance of Wanja Commercial Bank near you and enjoy VIP treatment. Looking at the business card in his hand, Su Tong couldn't help but curiously asked, in other words, are there traces of your Wanja Trading Company in any script world? Yes. With a 30% discount, he said with certainty, and occasionally there will be many special props for sale. He also gave Su Tong a shopping list so that he could check the purchased items and props. It is obviously unrealistic to throw so many things into the prop book separately, but Su Tong has his own way. When I bought those books at Dokeng Bookstore, the big box presented by the boss was still there. Su Tong threw all the props into the box, and then threw them into the team warehouse. When the time is right, find a place and study slowly. Gone. Su Tong waved his hand and left with his things contentedly. However, as soon as he left, a group of people appeared at the door of the shop. Sakuragi Sime looked at the shop in front of him, and his eyes couldn't help but shine. This is the prop shop that Yamamoto mentioned. That's right. Let's talk about it first. I only have one crystal of the dead in my hand. There was another person standing next to Sakuragi Sime. This person was very thin and tall. He was holding a particularly large fan in one hand. Akekamaru, you don't have to worry, I have enough bargaining chips in hand. Sakuragi Sime looked bored towards this man. He hated Akekamaru. This guy was not only a lunatic, but also a precise selfish person. At the critical moment, he would probably sell himself out. However, for this mission, he could only grit his teeth and choose to cooperate with Akemaru. Although this guy was despicable and selfish, at least he was strong enough that no one could fault him. Complete the mission as soon as possible. Our ancestors only gave us half an hour. After completing this side mission, we will meet up with Yamato-kun. Now he is the only proton left. There must be no more mistakes. The two of them walked into the store as they talked. Sakuragi Haruaki looked at the empty shelves with only a few products placed on them, and couldn't help but feel a bad feeling in his heart. Walking to the counter, his eyes quickly scanned the list placed on the counter. When he saw the nightmare bone ring, his eyes lit up and he said, "I want this ring." The clerk came to his senses only after hearing the voice, looked at the two people in front of him, and immediately spread his hands helplessly. "Sorry, all the items in our store have been sold out, and we will be closed from now on." Sold out. Hearing this, Sakuragi Sime and Akimaru were dumbfounded. Akimaru's eyes turned red and he grabbed the clerk's collar. "Baga, how could it be sold out? Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Lie." When the clerk saw Akimaru looking like he wanted to eat people, he said helplessly, "I can't help it. He is too rich. He has bought up all the goods in our store." Baga Yarode. Hearing this, Akimaru was completely angry. If they couldn't get the props, their mission would not be completed. This is still a small matter. The most troublesome thing is that all the plans originally set came to nothing. In a rage, Akimaru pushed the clerk out after giving him a 30% discount. Fool. Seeing this scene, Sakuragi Kingming's face changed drastically, turned around and ran out. But it was too late. The 30% off head that had hit the shelf hard and lowered his head. "You will pay for your stupidity." The moment he finished speaking, he slowly raised his head. The empty eye sockets seemed to be torn open. There was no eyeball visible, only an endless hole from which countless black liquids and curses spewed out. Boom. The moment Sakuragi Sime escaped from the shop, his back was instantly swallowed up by black flames. At the same time, Sakuragi Sime received a prompt from the prop book: "Because your actions have been opposed by the Bank of All Worlds, starting today, all members of the alliance to which you belong will be included in the blacklist of the Bank of All Worlds. It is a prohibited transaction object." Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 855. Huh. Su Tong turned around and looked behind him. It seems to be in the direction of the grocery store. Would you like to go take a look? The eldest princess obviously heard the news. Su Tong curled his lips and said, "What's so interesting? I've been responsible for half of his lifetime's worth of goods. I don't want people to set off fireworks to celebrate." As he spoke, he looked at the list in his hand. The props here are very unique. Unlike traditional prop cards, they are more functional. And most of them are consumables. And what's interesting is that these props all have a very obvious distinctive style. That is harming others without benefiting oneself. Every item seems to be associated with a curse. According to the 30% discount, it seems that the general store of the Wanja Chamber of Commerce sells props based on the background of the script. In this way, if the background of the script world is stronger, it means that the props sold by the Wanja Chamber of Commerce will be more powerful. It seems that every time I enter the script world in the future, I will need to go to the Wanja Chamber of Commerce for a stroll. Su Tong then reviewed these props one by one against the list. In addition to the whetstone, there are really many excellent props that can be used. For example, this one called Malicious Horsepot can increase your resistance to the curse of the evil god by 100% after being carried on your body. This thing was exactly what he needed most. Su Tong hung the horsepot on his waist, which looked similar to a marching pot. After hanging it up, Su Tong immediately felt a lot more relaxed. It seems to work pretty well. There is also a gadget called the Evil God Alarm, which can be placed around you. Once an evil god approaches, this thing will sound an alarm that only the owner can hear. This thing can be used by Gao Zhou and the others, and it will definitely increase their chance of survival in a place like this. And there's this thing. Su Tong noticed a token at this time. After taking a closer look at the introduction content on the list, he immediately became interested. Ear Ghost. Rumor has it that the ear consciousness of an evil god became a spirit. After getting rid of the evil god's body, he became an independent individual. Active Skill 1, it consumes 400 script points. After activation, the ear ghost will cover your ears, during which you will get a short-term tailwind ear effect. Note, be careful with this little guy, he is a master liar. Seeing the note, Su Tong narrowed his eyelids. This thing was a bit cheating. It is said that seeing is believing and hearing is believing, but people tend to believe what they hear. Especially if you use your ears to listen to what others are saying, it will be easier to believe what you hear. If what this little guy lets you hear at this time is his lie, a piece of false information, maybe you can be tricked directly into your grandma's house. Give it a try. If this guy lies, throw him into the pit. Su Tong had already made up his mind to find an opportunity to test this prop. At this moment, he suddenly noticed that the black diary in the list. He had also noticed this diary before, and it seemed that writing names could curse the other person to death. Looking at the contents on the list, it seems to be very naughty. It can be seen that after seeing how deceptive the previous props were, Su Tong no longer had high expectations for the capabilities of this thing. However, after carefully reading the instructions for use, Su Tong's eyes gradually became fiery. Black diary. Rumor has it that as long as you write a person's name on it, the other person will die the next day. Of course, this is just a rumor. Active Skill 1, Grudge. After writing the opponent's name on it, there is a 15% chance that the opponent will be at risk of sudden death, a 20% chance that the opponent's luck will be reduced, and a 40% chance that the opponent will get into trouble. But similarly, users will also encounter the same treatment. Note, the prop user can only use this ability if he wholeheartedly wants to kill the opponent. It is completely the ability to die together. If it were another person, seeing this prop card, he might not want to use it. After all, exchanging one life for another may not be cost-effective. But for Su Tong, a madman, death is not a terrible thing at all. Not only was it not scary, but he had a little expectation in his heart, and felt that such a way to die seemed to be a good choice. Don't forget, you are really dead when you die, but you are not necessarily dead. He has an underworld fruit in his hand, which can delay death. As long as he is given enough energy, it is not impossible to repair his body and resurrect him with the life essence continuously absorbed by the Ruyi furnace. It has to be said that Su Tong has an amazing talent in committing suicide. Looking at this death diary, he has already begun to think about the person to use it. For example, among the Japs players, isn't there a proton? If we could get the name of the proton. Su Tong was lost in thought when suddenly the eldest princess grabbed his arm and dodged behind the wall. I just heard the sound of bells coming from the corridor in the distance. Ding bell, jingle bell. It's the evil god. Su Tong frowned, and suddenly became alert. He took out 2 black daggers from the prop book and held them in his hands. Black Water Dragon Teeth, pair. Active Skill 1, Dragon Breath. Single, consumes 300 script points. After activation, the next attack will ignore the opponent's defense and armor. Double, consumes 500 script points. After activation, the next attack will ignore space spells and props and cause damage to the target soul. Cooling time, 30 hours, cooling down. Active Skill 2, Black Curse. It consumes 500 script points and launches a level 6 curse on the injured target. During the curse, the cost of all the target's skills is doubled. This skill can be activated with any dagger. Cooling time, 1 hour. Holding 2 daggers in his hands, Su Tong quickly took out the blood curse whetstone and tried rubbing it a few times. As the dagger rubbed rapidly on the whetstone, a blood-red halo enveloped the dagger. The reason why I chose this pair of daggers instead of the pure yang sword is because the pure yang sword itself is extremely pure and has great restraint against evil attributes. Su Tong didn't know if there would be any conflict if the blood curse whetstone was attached to the pure yang sword, but the effect would definitely not be as good as these two daggers. I saw him holding the dagger behind his back with both hands, looking sideways into the corridor. This time the eldest princess is here, and she might be able to take the opportunity to kill an evil god. However, as the sound of the bell got closer and closer, what appeared in the corridor was not the evil god he had been thinking about, but an old man covered in a white cloak and holding a long stick. The sound of the bell came from the old man's feet. Behind the old man, there were two figures following. When Su Tong saw the attire of those two people, he couldn't help being surprised. It's a Japanese player. The reason why I am so sure is that one of them is Inu Murai, who failed to plunder the national treasure before. This guy always has that sword in his hand wherever he goes, so it's very easy to identify. The Japs player is here. Who is that old man? Is he also a player? No, the aura of this old man is very vague, completely different from the aura of the player. Could it be him? Su Tong's heart skipped a beat, and a person's name suddenly popped into his mind, Mansai Musashi Gen. Su Tong knew that this old man had come to the new territories. He originally planned to wait for the antique exchange meeting at Shinkong University before confronting this old man, but he did not expect to meet him so soon. Knowing that this old guy's strength was by no means simple, Su Tong did not dare to be careless and quietly hid behind the corner wall with his eldest princess, intending to see what this guy was doing here. Not long after, he saw a man rushing over with a look of embarrassment on his face. Su Tong took a look and said, "Hey, isn't this the kid who played magic last time? I let you run away last time, don't let me catch the chance this time." Su Tong remembered the last time he was fainted by this kid, and he already had some murderous intention in his heart. After seeing a group of people saying a few words and then heading east, Su Tong simply took the eldest princess to follow them. Because of the existence of the old guy Mansai Musashi Gen, Su Tong didn't dare to follow them so close. He followed them from a distance, and he didn't even look at them deliberately. It's just that we were far away and couldn't hear clearly what they were saying, so I simply took out the ear ghost sign. Just try the effect of this thing. After Su Tong activated the sign in his hand, he saw a sneaky little guy jumping out of the sign. The little guy crawled behind his ear and merged with Su Tong's ears, which looked a bit like rabbit ears. I don't know if the owner of this thing was originally a rabbit spirit, and his ears became so long. But as my ears grew longer, my hearing suddenly increased. Ancestor, it was my fault in doing things, but Akimaru, the bastard, escaped from the battlefield. Such a coward will only drag us down. After returning this time, Ancestor, please be sure to punish him severely. Sakuragi Haruaki said fiercely. Akimaru's ability is very special. He can consciously occupy other people's bodies and retain his powerful strength. It is precisely this powerful ability that makes Akimaru invincible. This guy is like a brainless man who does whatever he wants. If you can't win, simply abandon the body and return your consciousness to the body of the deity. This kind of ability, if used well, will be a weapon for the team, but Akimaru obviously has not developed in this direction. Yes. This thing must be the result of this guy. Senior, please be sure to punish him severely. On the side, Inu Murai and another Japanese player said to Mansai Musashi Gen at the same time. Akimaru's trouble caused all the players in the alliance to be included in the blacklist of the Bank of Commerce of all realms. It would be strange to say that they are not hated by others. It's just that they belong to an alliance and cannot attack each other. Otherwise, they would have found a way to do it first. Damn this shit-stirring stick. Well, I will consider this. Mansai Musashi Gen nodded, then raised his hand to ask them to be quiet. He glanced back, and his smooth and jade-like face showed a bit of coldness. Before this, the young man behind had been following for so long. Isn't it time for you to come out? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 856. Discovered. Su Tong was shocked. At such a long distance, both he and the eldest princess had perfectly concealed their auras. Even if it were him, he would definitely not find anyone following them without deliberately exploring. Why, do you two still need me to come and ask you to come out personally? You have been following me all the way here. How long do you plan to follow? Mansai Musashi Gen's sneer became more and more harsh. Su Tong took a deep breath. He did not expect that this old guy's strength far exceeded his expectations, but he did not give in. The worst result was that he would take the eldest princess with him temporarily. Avoid the itch. However, just when Su Tong was about to go out to meet this Mansai Musashi Gen, Su Tong suddenly raised his feet and froze in place, narrowed his eyes into a line, hid his gaze, and waited quietly. Since you two refuse to come out, then I can only do it myself and invite you to. There was a fierce murderous aura in Mansai Musashi Gen's voice, and he seemed to be ready to take action. But Su Tong remained unmoved, and time passed by. In the end, Mansai Musashi Gen didn't take action, but the voice in his ears became more urgent, and he even started to curse. Hearing this, Su Tong sneered, reached out and forcibly pulled the ear ghost off his ear and held it in his hand. I knew it was you who was doing the trick. When Su Tong saw the introduction of this thing before, he was wondering if this thing would trick him at a critical moment. Unexpectedly, it was just the first time for me to use it, but this thing was so deceptive that I almost choked myself. This is no wonder, Su Tong. After all, if you listen with your ears open, you will naturally believe the information you hear. This guy took advantage of this, not only imitating the tone and voice of Mansai Musashi Gen, but also suddenly stumbling upon him at critical moments, making it difficult for people to guard against him. I was originally here to eavesdrop on information, but I was almost fooled by him and jumped out. The ear ghost was caught in Su Tong's hand and began to twist his body to beg for mercy. But Su Tong didn't give him this chance at all. The abilities and shortcomings of this thing are so obvious that it is difficult for people to guard against it. Even if you are honest for a while, there is no guarantee that one time you will be tricked, it will kill you. Since you don't know how to praise me, I don't need you anymore. After Su Tong said this, he simply threw it directly into the entrance of his hall. As soon as the ear ghost fell into the entrance of the hall, he immediately sensed something was wrong and turned into a black light and tried to run away. But Da Ya and the others are not just for nothing. Da Ya stretched out her finger and hit the ear ghost with a pink light. Then the 5 black balls rolled on the ground. Without waiting for fortune and good luck to take action, the ear ghost was killed. Surrounded by the chubby bodies, each one was shining with golden light, and they hit the ear ghost, almost knocking it out of its wits. Then Yongxuan, who was lying on the fairy furnace, opened his mouth and sucked in. A suction force came and sucked the ear ghost into the fairy furnace. He raised his paw and slapped it into the fairy furnace. Ding! You have caused irreversible damage to the prop ear ghost. The prop is damaged and cannot be repaired. Following the prompt, the ear ghost who was separated from the evil god was refined into an elixir in the fairy furnace and rolled into the elixir warehouse. Dia opened the pill storehouse, squeezed it with her fingers, and a dark red pill appeared in her hand. Then she climbed to the entrance of the hall, threw it lightly, and threw it to Su Tong. Su Tong picked it up and threw it into the prop book. Golden pill of 6 consciousnesses ear sense. Users who consume it can greatly improve their auditory abilities in their 6 senses, and have a 30% chance of gaining the ability to identify sounds. Su Tong glanced at the entry for the elixir and felt that it had little effect, so he threw it into the prop book and planned to go back and use the fantasy Rubik's Cube to upgrade it. I squinted my eyes and looked into the corridor again, and found that Mansai Musashi-gen and the others had already gone away. What on earth are these guys doing here? With doubts, Su Tong and the eldest princess slowly groped behind them. After the opponent's group arrived at the open space in the center of Kowloon walled city, Sakuragi Sime and others took out several large boxes. Opening the box, a pungent smell quickly spread from the box, and a viscous liquid had formed a gel-like form in the box. If you look closely, you will find that there is a baby sealed inside these jelly-like things. Is this it? Sakuragi Sime looked at the baby sealed in the box with a strange expression on his face, as if he was afraid of this thing, but also very curious. He came from the same sect as Mansai Musashi-gen, but his status in Onmyo Shrine can only be regarded as a middle-level one. He had only heard about the contents of this box, but had never actually seen them. This is the soul boy created by Onmyo-jin Palace at great cost. Rumor has it that it is a treasure created with part of the soul of the god. 4 boxes and 4 soul boys were neatly arranged in a row under the command of Mansai Musashi-gen and placed in the open space in front of them. Looking at them, I just felt that the 4 soul boys who were sealed in the grease were all white and fat, and they were very cute. Just looking at them for a while makes people feel numb in their hearts, and they can't help but want to rush up and eat these soul boys. Be careful, don't be affected by these soul boys. Seeing the wandering looks in the eyes of Inu Mursai and another Japanese player Shushida Akamoto, Sakuragi Haruaki immediately spoke to warn them. At the same time, he was also secretly surprised in his heart. He is indeed a soul boy carefully cultivated by Yin Yang Shrine. He still has such powerful power in a sealed state. Crash. I saw Gen Mansai Musashi throwing a stack of white paper into the air and reciting a convoluted mantra. Large pieces of white paper were gradually assembled into a white altar under the inexplicable force in mid-air. A candle stood on the altar. When the candle was lit, it actually emitted a fluorescent green light. What is this guy doing? Su Tong quietly poked his head out of the window in the corridor on the second floor and looked at Mansai Musashi-gen's actions. He was a little confused for a moment, but it really surprised him that Mansai Musashi-gen could also control paper. It's like some kind of sacrifice, he's offering sacrifices to the evil god. The eldest princess took a glance and guessed the purpose of this group of people. After all, this is a cave. Besides those evil gods, what else can be sacrificed? But what interests the princess is the 4 soul boys under the altar. These soul boys have huge yin qi in their bodies, and they don't know how they came about. Head. At this time, Gu Zibai's voice came from the team channel. The guy on the 6th floor is downstairs. Gu Zibai quietly pushed open a crack in the door and saw that the woman in the corridor had left and was heading towards the stairs. After Gu Zibai finished speaking, Su Tong and the eldest princess heard a sound of footsteps. The sound echoed in the corridor, but they didn't know which direction it came from. If you run around and run in the wrong direction, you will collide head-on with these evil gods. Su Tong took out the evil god pointer and looked at it. Seeing that the white needle on it was pointing forward, he pulled the eldest princess and ran behind. The 2 of them hid their breath and hid in a room not far away from the opposite door and waited. Da-da-da. After a while, a pair of big black feet walked out of the corridor on the 2nd floor. These feet were very big, at least 60 yards, but the owner of these feet was a very thin man, with a disproportionate body. Every step he took was difficult. The man's eyes were dull and he stood at the top of the stairs, whispering furtively. Then he slowly turned around and walked hard down the stairs step by step. Just when the man turned around, Su Tong saw through the crack in the door that a shrine wrapped in red cloth was embedded in the man's back. The shrine looked like a huge tumor, with red ribbons like squirming blood vessels piercing the man's body. This guy is different from the ones I met before. Plus the woman Gu Zibai met. How many evil gods are there in this building? Su Tong hid in the corner and watched this weird man carrying a shrine slowly walk downstairs. He couldn't help but wonder whether he should take advantage of this opportunity to run to room 404, call out the 7th master and the 8th master and eat them in one pot. Ding bell. Boom. At this time, a bell and a leather drum sounded. As soon as Su Tong heard the sound, he felt a little itchy on his body. It's them. Hearing the ringtone, Su Tong immediately thought of the pair of black and white evil gods he met last time. Just listening to the ringing sound getting closer and closer, the itching sensation on my body gradually began to tingle, but at this time, the horse pot around my waist suddenly produced a suction force. I don't know when the mouth of the pot opened and faced Su Tong. Breathing in, my whole body immediately felt much more relaxed. Su Tong didn't dare to be careless and hurriedly used a ball of incense and merit to suppress his restlessness. At the same time, he looked out along the crack in the door. Sure enough, two figures, one black and one white, came down the stairs. The aura of these two guys was very strong, like a pair of plague gods, covering the ground around them wherever they passed. A layer of black liquid. After the two guys walked downstairs, Su Tong saw the woman Gu Zibai was talking about. The woman's arms were pierced by iron nails, and she held the shrine high. The wind brought by her movement blew away a corner of the hijab, revealing her faceless face. Compared to the previous three, this woman looked the most harmless. But when Su Tong looked at the shrine, a strong sense of uneasiness came over him, causing him to quickly avert his eyes. The woman's steps also paused at this moment. She turned around slowly and pointed the shrine at the door where Su Tong and the eldest princess were. She quietly opened her eyes and stared at the door for a while before turning around and leaving. Go downstairs. Of these four evil gods, the two of us can only deal with one. After the four evil gods walked downstairs, the eldest princess frowned. The auras of the four evil gods were completely different. If the two of them joined forces, they might be able to kill one, but if there were more than two, it would be difficult. Then call out the master's wife, and I will invite the 7th and 8th masters. Su Tong gritted his teeth and said. We can only wait until next time. We may not have enough time this time. Meng Xing's time is limited. They have been in for a while, and they will be squeezed out of the cave when the time is up. However, Su Tong has the prop nightmare bone ring in his hand, so he can enter at any time if necessary. Let's go and see what those devils are planning. Su Tong said and was about to stand up, but just when he was about to reach out to open the door, the evil god pointer in his hand suddenly began to rotate rapidly, and a pungent rotten smell hit the air. Through the crack in the door, Su Tong saw a dark figure standing outside the door, holding a bloody human head in his hand. It was Debo's head. Su Tong's pupils tightened, and with the blessing of dark vision, the shadow's face gradually became clearer, and under the short hair, a strange smile appeared on the delicate face. Guosiang. Su Tong's heart suddenly breathed a sigh of relief. Seeing Guosiang holding Debo's head in his hands and eating it like a piece of fruit, he couldn't help but clench his hands into a ball. The evil gods are not 4, but 5. What an evil god! Infinite script killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 857. Kaka Kaka. Through a door, Su Tong could clearly hear the sound of gnawing outside. I don't know why, when Su Tong hears the sound, he can't help but think of the image of a dog chewing bones. He did not move, looking carefully at Guosiang in front of him through the crack in the door. I don't know what Guosiang looks like originally, but the female college student he plays this time is very good looking. But at this moment, Guosiang's face was covered with blood, and Debo had not been dead for long, so that when Guosiang's claws opened Debo's head, Su Tong could smell the smell inside. Tasteless, tasteless. Guosiang licked it as if she was possessed, and seemed to notice something. She suddenly raised her head and stared at the door in front of her. Su Tong's heartbeat gradually accelerated as he watched Guosiang approach the door step by step. He Shui Lanja was already in his hand, and the eldest princess slowly raised her hands. Guo Xiang looked at the door in front of her, seeming to be hesitating, and stretched out her hand to knock on the door. But the door was gently opened a crack. What was unexpected was that a spice bag was thrown out of the crack. Guo Xiang subconsciously took it and tore open the plastic bag with her fingernails. Looking at the powder that was spilled, Guo Xiang stuck out her tongue and licked it, then smashed it in her mouth, then held the head and the seasoning packet in her arms. Ran away. Only when Guo Xiang's figure gradually disappeared in the corridor, Su Tongke and the eldest princess walked out of the room. What did you give her? The eldest princess looked at Su Tong with suspicion. Su Tong took a bite of the instant noodles in his hand, looked at Guo Xiang's disappearing back and said, "Injectable soul. Believe it or not." The eldest princess rolled her eyes. She was used to Su Tong's habit of talking nonsense. There is no shrine on Guo Xiang's body, which means that she is not an evil god, but she has obviously lost her mind. According to Gu Zibai, the ability of the woman holding the shrine seems to be to turn all living creatures into monsters. I have already experienced the power of the black and white evil god. It is unknown what the Bigfoot's abilities are, but he noticed that the blood on the ground was spilled from upstairs. Bigfoot appeared from the second floor, so the two seemed to have no intersection. The most likely possibility is that Guo Xiang met another evil god upstairs and was bewitched by his mind, so he killed Dibo instead. So there should be another evil god upstairs, but why it didn't come down is unknown. The two walked to the window and found that the four evil gods who had just walked downstairs were already standing in front of the altar. A black aura emanated from the shrines on their bodies. These auras were floating in the air like the long hair of female ghosts. Even though they were far apart, Su Tong could feel the despairing malice and curse. What the hell is this? Inu Murai's hand tightly grasped the handle of the knife at his waist. The four monsters in front of him already made his scalp numb, not to mention the shrines on them, which were simply the source of evil. Even though he had a determined mind, he cut thousands of times a day in order to practice his sword, but at this moment, facing the shrine in front of him, Inu Mursai suddenly felt a deep sense of powerlessness in his heart. It was as if the power he was proud of had no effect at all in front of these monsters. At this time, a hand was placed on the back of his hand. Inu Mursai raised his head and found that it was Sakuragi Sime. He shook his head. "Relax, we have brought tribute, they will not attack us rashly, don't be nervous." "Do you know what they are?" Inu Mursai asked in a low voice after hearing Sakuragi Sime's words. Before coming here, Inu Murai didn't know that there was such a terrifying thing here. If he had known, he would never risk coming to this place. He now even suspected that Akimaru had noticed something and deliberately made such a big noise to take the opportunity to escape. Sakuragi Sime shook his head and said that we can talk about these things after we go out. The most important thing now is Master Mansai's plan. Gen Mansai Musashi stood under the altar, chanting in a language that no one else could understand, while his body circled around the altar as if he were dancing a great god. What is this guy doing? Although Su Tong from a distance could sense that there seemed to be some kind of pattern hidden in Mansai Musashi Gen's funny movements, he could not see the reason behind it. He said he wanted to make a deal with these evil gods. Unexpectedly, the eldest princess started to translate directly for Su Tong, and he turned his head in surprise. The eldest princess just said lightly, "This method of praying is actually the earliest way for shamanism to communicate with ghosts and gods. It is not unique to the Japanese country, or it is originally our thing." Su Tong chose to shut up and listen to the eldest princess' explanation for this kind of question that touched on his blind spot. "These four soul boys represent my sincerity. If you are willing, you can come to the Yin Yang Shrine. Every year we will offer such soul boys as tributes, and the four of you can also enjoy the incense of the shrine." Buzz buzz. The four shrines were trembling slightly, as if they were discussing something and arguing with each other. Then the woman on the left stretched out a hand from the shrine that was held high in the air, stretched out her hand and grabbed the soul boy in front of her into the shrine, and soon bright red blood overflowed from the shrine. Seeing this, the other three shrines seemed unable to resist the temptation, and they all stretched out their hands to grab the tributes in front of them. They agreed. Su Tong frowned. They should have agreed, otherwise they wouldn't eat the tribute. Kaka kaka. Blood dripped on the ground, and the smell of blood in the air became more and more pungent. Sakuragi Simei's face became more and more excited, and he shouted in his heart, "Eat, eat, you beasts, after tasting the delicious food of the soul boy, from now on it's a dog kept in my yin-yang shrine." Mansai Mutagen waited patiently for them to finish eating, and then continued to dance and dance around the altar. The eldest princess couldn't help frowning when she saw this. No, he is ordering these evil gods to find all the living people hiding in the cave. Can those evil gods listen to him? Su Tong was a little disapproving. If these evil gods could keep their promises, they would no longer be evil gods. Sure enough, as Su Tong said, the four shrines were not moved at all by Mansai Mutagen's order, and even a pair of eyes glanced back and forth at Sakuragi Simei and others, the kind of excitement after tasting blood. His gaze became more fierce now. Baga, Inu Murase noticed the deep malice in the eyes of these evil gods when they looked at him, and immediately grasped the handle of the knife. As long as these evil gods made the slightest move, he would definitely launch it without mercy. Behead. Why? Upon seeing this, Mansai Mutagen let out a long sigh and stopped beating. Instead, he looked at the four shrines and said with regret, "Sure enough, this nation is full of despicable evil, even the gods here are like this." As soon as these words came out, the surrounding air suddenly began to drop rapidly, and the eyes of the four shrines were staring directly at Mansai Musashi-gen. Ah! A piercing scream suddenly erupted from the shrine held in the woman's palm, as if it had suffered some huge injury, causing the shrine to begin to tremble violently. Wow wow wow! The cry of the baby could be heard in the shrine. The baby that had been eaten by them was now crying in their belly. Click! Following a harsh explosion, a dark aura overflowed uncontrollably from the shrine. Even the woman holding the shrine fell to her knees, twisting her body in pain. After the other three shrines sensed something was wrong, they immediately launched an attack on Mansai Mutagen. The terrifying evil thoughts twisted into a terrible curse storm and poured out instantly, turning the surrounding world into darkness. 24 Divine Gates. Faced with the terrifying curse storm in front of him, Mansai Mutagen seemed to have been prepared for it. He opened his hands, and the arched and shaped divine gates rose from the ground, forming a purple barrier. Boom! The entire cave sky was trembling, and the terrifying power of the curse hit the barrier, causing cracks like spider webs to appear in the barrier in just a moment. Sure enough, the talks fell apart. Su Tong was not surprised at all by this result, and even had a little expectation, hoping that they would bite the dog. He looked into the barrier, seeing the wave of curse power that was impacting the barrier, and secretly cheered for them in his heart. If you convert such curse power into skills, at least at level 10 or above, even if your body of darkness has not been replaced, you may not be able to resist such a terrifying curse attack. But Mansai Musashigen's strength seemed to exceed Su Tong's expectations. After the old guy took out the talisman from his sleeve and put it on the barrier, the originally cracked barrier quickly began to recover. Stupid, if the soul boy you eat refuses to obey, just wait to be devoured by the soul boy. Sakuragi Simei laughed loudly. The yin-yang shrine has many ways to deal with these evil gods. This soul boy is specially used to capture them. Once eaten, unless the good gods who enjoy incense help, it is impossible for them to break the curse. Something is not right. When Su Tong saw the scene in the distance, he couldn't help but feel a cold sweat for these four evil gods. Just when he was thinking about how to take action to help them, out of the corner of his eye, he suddenly saw the other end of the corridor. Guoxiang, who had just left, was standing there at some point, with blood-red tears in his eyes, staring at them like two black holes, and his mouth slowly opened. Opening, the originally delicate face was deformed and torn. At this time, Su Tong saw that in Guoxiang's mouth, there was actually a miniature statue of a god. An extremely angry roar rang out from the statue, carrying this terrible storm of curses and attacking the two of them, death. Infinite script killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 858. Boom. At this time, the corridor exploded, and Guoxiang's figure was wrapped in a bloody red mist and flew out lightly. Su Tong and the eldest princess were caught in the middle for a while. Boss. What's going on with Guoxiang? There was such a big movement below. Gu Zibai had already unknowingly found his way to the third floor, ready to respond at any time. I don't know, this guy might be possessed, so don't worry about her yet. Su Tong looked at the time. The time for them to enter the cave had come, and they would be forcibly sent out of the cave soon. Thinking of this, Su Tong looked back at Mansai Musa Shijen and others. A bold idea suddenly came to my mind. Help me protect the law. As he finished speaking, he suddenly turned around and rushed towards Mansai Musa Shijen and others. No matter what these devils do, I can't let them succeed. Stop him. Sakuragi Sime noticed Su Tong's thoughts, and the three of them immediately rushed towards Su Tong. But before they could get close to Su Tong, the eldest princess who was following Su Tong stood in front of them. With a raise of her hand, billowing black water surrounded the eldest princess and turned into a stormy wave, crashing down on the three of them. Ha! Facing the black water in front of him, the expression on Akamoto's face suddenly changed, and a scepter made of bone appeared in his hand. With a gentle wave, a small mountain-like shikigami suddenly appeared in front of the three people. Boom! The black water hit the shikigami, causing the shikigami to let out a low wailing sound. This black water has powerful corrosive power. The shikigami summoned by Akamoto under the tree is the fourth among the 800 grass-headed gods. 173 mountain turtles could not bear such harm. However, the three of them didn't care about this. Instead, they used the turtle's shell to jump up high and avoid the incoming black water. They were about to join forces to fight back. However, as soon as the three of them emerged, the eldest princess had already been killed. Come over. This woman never gives her enemies a chance to breathe when it comes to killing. Although not as good as Su Tong, her strength may not be much worse than that of Su Tong. Black water rolled up all over the sky. She raised her finger and moved forward slightly. In an instant, her figure came to Sakuragi Sime. Yinkinzan. Seeing this, Sakuragi Sime's figure suddenly exploded into countless cherry blossoms scattered in the air. Sakuragi Sime's figure emerged from each cherry blossom, and in an instant, thousands of phantoms attacked the eldest princess at the same time. However, the eldest princess ignored this. An old crooked neck tree appeared behind her, and 3 dao fruits appeared behind her. Countless cherry blossoms were crushed by a force before they could get close, and a long black dress floated in the air. With a slight swing, her speed also accelerated to an incredible level at the same time. Her feet galloped through the cherry blossoms in front of her, and she raised her hand to kill one of the petals. Not good. Sakuragi Sime never expected that this woman's strength was so terrifying. Not only did she see through her illusion, but she also directly attacked her vitals. Cut. Fortunately, at the critical moment, Inu Murase took action in time. The sword at his waist was unsheathed, and a white rainbow flashed out. The sword was covered with a layer of murderous aura, and it was extremely sharp, making people frightened. The eldest princess tapped her foot lightly, and then her white jade-like fingers flicked on the blade. Bang, there was a sound, and huge force struck along the blade, almost making Inu Murase unable to hold the knife in his hand, but he after all, he was a top expert of the Yagyo section. He took advantage of his strength to stop his movements, and when he turned the knife in his hand, another electric python-like blade cut out. This move was skillful with the sword, as if it had gone through a lot of trial and error. But the eldest princess seemed to have seen through it a long time ago. There was a flash of sarcasm in her eyes. She just turned sideways and cleverly avoided the killing knife. At the same time, when she raised her hand, black water penetrated from the shikigami under her feet, like a spear almost penetrated Inu Murase. Seeing the huge gap in strength between the two sides, Shuxia Akamoto also called out 3 shikigami at the same time, "Hold her." The 3 shikigami formed a glyph and surrounded them. Only then did Sakuragi Haruaki and Inu Mursai take a breath, and then quickly join the battle. While the eldest princess was restraining these 3 people, Su Tong had already rushed towards Mansai Musashi. General, what he didn't expect was that with his move, Guo Xiang followed closely behind him. However, the girl's eyes were red, and she obviously put Su Tong and Mansai Musashi Gen in the same group. Seeing this, Su Tong simply shouted to Mansai Musashi Gen in front of him, "Grandpa, please help me." Seeing this, Mansai Musashi Gen smiled coldly, "I'm here to save you now." After that, the old man actually took the initiative to greet him, but looking at his murderous look, it didn't look like he was coming to save him. The figures of the 2 people intertwined, and Mansai Musashi Gen's speed suddenly increased. Although he looked old, his physical fitness was astonishingly terrible. As soon as he made a move, his fingers almost touched Su Tong's ribs. With just a light touch, he could Su Tong was seriously injured. Even if he had the body of an earthly immortal, he would not be able to avoid it. When Su Tong saw this, he did not hide. He summoned the pure yang sword and chopped off the old guy's head. Seeing that Su Tong was about to trade his injuries for his life, Mansai Musashi Gen immediately had a misty white aura coming out of his body, and he changed his attack method and shot towards Su Tong's pure yang sword. Bump! With a muffled sound, Su Tong's sword sank, and immediately the 2 figures suddenly separated. After testing each other, neither one took advantage. However, at this time, Guo Xiang's figure teleported to Su Tong's side in an instant. She raised her slender arm and the blood-colored ripples enveloped Su Tong's face as she patted her palm. A wolf in front and a tiger in the back, Su Tong's face showed no sign of timidity. He called up the great Sun Ruyi Road and appeared behind him. The furnace was full of thunder liquid like boiling water, evaporating a large amount of life essence and injecting it into Su Tong's body. Holding the black water dragon Fang in the left hand, and holding the pure yang in the right hand, 1 against 2, without losing the slightest advantage. Seeing the ocean-like breath of life on Su Tong's body, Mansai Musashi Gen's eyes turned green for a while, staring at Su Tong as if it was some kind of panacea. "Swallow him, and I can live for at least another 100 years, Mansai Musashi Gen no longer restrained himself, and was determined to devour Su Tong no matter what the price. Immortal technique Yin Yang Humph. At this time, Mansai Musashi Gen let out a huge roar, and a stream of yin and yang energy mixed into a ball of sound waves and shot out, rushing around. Click, click. Whether it was Su Tong's pure yang sword energy or Guo Xiang's curse power, as soon as it came into contact with this sound wave, it immediately dispersed like a nemesis. Those that could not be dispersed directly exploded and let out a shrill scream. It felt like someone had stabbed a knife into his heart. Su Tong and Guo Xiang were caught off guard and both were injured, but neither of them retreated. Instead, they attacked Mansai Musashi Gen in a tacit understanding. Su Tong slapped his forehead, and the fat man covered in lightning escaped from above his head. Rumble, rumble. Lightning flashed, and the little fat man seemed to transform into a god of thunder, summoning endless thunderstorms to hit Gen Mansai Musashi. Second soul. At this moment, Mansai Musashi Gen was caught off guard. His yin and yang chi, theoretically speaking, were the innate nemesis of all methods, but they did not include thunder methods. This time he was caught off guard and was struck by lightning instantly, and the Shikigami behind him was beaten to pieces by the lightning. Die. At the same time, Guoxiang ignored the terrifying lightning and rushed straight towards Mansai Musashi General. Countless terrifying and bloody curses converged into a sharp blade and penetrated into Mansai Musashi Gen's lower abdomen. Suffering heavy injuries one after another, Mansai Musashi Gen's face showed a look of pain. Then he formed seals with his hands, and the muscles on his back began to squirm. The wide robe suddenly turned into powder, and a big black hand came out from Mansai Musashi Gen's. He stretched out his back, raised his hand and knocked Guoxiang away with a palm. The giant hand exudes an ominous aura, and a dark aura like mountains, seas, and prisons surges toward the surroundings overwhelmingly. At the other end, Sakuragi Sime, who was restraining the eldest princess, couldn't help but be shocked when he saw this giant hand. Sure enough, the rumors are true. I have long heard a rumor that the reason why Mansai Musashi Gen was able to survive for such a long time was because he transplanted part of the ancient god's corpse into his body. This part of the ancient god's corpse gave him the power to devour all life. I thought this was just a rumor. After all, I didn't see anything unusual in Master Mansai. It wasn't until this giant hand appeared that I realized that the rumor was not false. Under the influence of Mansai Musashi Gen, the aura of this giant hand became more and more powerful. It actually absorbed the surrounding thunder and lightning, and then slapped Su Tong hard. Faced with such a terrifying aura, Su Tong's face changed slightly, but he did not retreat. Instead, he took the initiative to step forward and stepped heavily on the ground with one foot. After leaving a mark on the ground, the pure yang sword in his hand burned. The dazzling light struck at the terrifying big hand in front of him. Court death. Mansai Musashi Gen screamed excitedly when he saw this. In his eyes, Su Tong, whose life breath was like the sun, was like a superpower bank. His lifespan has been exhausted, but if he can devour Su Tong, he will not only be able to rejuvenate himself, but even extend his life for 100 years. Thinking of this, Mansai Musashi Gen almost spared no room and used all his strength to smash the ancient god's giant hand on his back and hit Su Tong. Boom! The entire cave sky was shaking violently, and the terrible storm of destruction tore the earth apart. In this aura of destruction, a figure struggled to move forward. The pure yang sword in his hand made a buzzing sound. The huge sword light in his raised hand struck out and slashed at the arm. This sword almost split the big hand in half. The huge pain made Mansai Musashi Gen tremble all over, and he vomited a mouthful of blood. His scarlet eyes were as crazy as a wild beast. He stretched out his hands, opened his mouth and forcefully pulled out the 8 sticks. He bit off his fingers and sucked the blood from his hands. This is the secret technique of Yin Yang Palace, which can greatly improve one's strength in a short period of time. Of course, the price is also high. For an old guy like Mansai Musashi Gen, using such a secret technique once is almost like dancing on the edge of death. But he doesn't care about the price. As long as he kills Su Tong and devours this guy, all his losses will be recovered. With the blessing of the secret technique, the giant hand on the back suddenly burst out with a more terrifying aura, shattering Su Tong's sword light with a punch, and hit Su Tong. Even though Su Tong's body was covered with a layer of dragon scales, it was also at this moment, the body was penetrated by the terrifying destructive force. At the next moment, the skin and flesh were cracked and almost torn to pieces. Die! Mansai Musashi Gen laughed almost maniacally, and his thin body burst out at Su Tong at a speed that was difficult to discern with the naked eye, ready to devour Su Tong. However, the moment Mansai Musashi Gen pounced on him, time around him became suddenly slow. After he noticed something was wrong, he looked again and found that Su Tong, who had been severely injured, had disappeared. Where are the people? Mansai Musashi Gen was dumbfounded. On the other side, Inu Mursai, who was besieging the eldest princess with his companions, suddenly felt something. The sharpness of the samurai made him suddenly raise the sword in his hand. Hold it in front of you. However, as a dazzling fire hit him in front of him, the huge fire dragon swallowed him up instantly, and at the same time there was only a bang sound. A broken blade flew in mid-air and stuck straight into the ground. Not good. Sakuragi Sime and Shuxia Akamoto suddenly turned around, and saw Su Tong coming towards them with the Chunyang sword. The blade of the sword waved, and a raging fire roared towards them. Retreat. Without enough time to think about why Su Tong, who had been severely injured by Master Mansai, suddenly appeared here intact, Sakuragi Sime hurriedly pulled Akamoto away from the tree. The eldest princess also took this opportunity to quickly join Su Tong. Su Tong grabbed Akamoto's prop book under the tree and glanced at the time. Just right, he raised the corner of his mouth and waved to Mansai Musashi Gen, "Next time I'll play with you again, bye." After saying that, he and the eldest princess disappeared directly in front of Wanzai and others. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 859. Bagaya Road. Seeing Su Tong's disappearing figure, Mansai Musashi Gen's facial features were twisted together in pain. At this moment, he seemed to have aged by dozens of years. The skin and flesh all over his body were covered with wrinkles, and all 10 of his fingers were bitten to pieces. You coward, you bastard Chinese! Come back! Mansai Musashi Gen was going crazy at this moment. He had spent such a high price, but Su Tong didn't hurt a single hair and walked away. You can imagine how aggrieved he felt in his heart. He was like a red-eyed gambler. When he saw that he was holding a straight flush, he did not hesitate to mortgage his house and car, and then all entered, winning tens of millions of wealth. As a result, when you clicked to withdraw money, you found that the gambling app was no longer able to connect. What's even more annoying is that when you click on it without giving up, the app will send you a text message in the background, "This game is for entertainment only. Gambling is against the law. 9 times out of 10 you will lose." Fortunately, Mansai Musashi Gen's heart was strong enough, otherwise I'm afraid he wouldn't have been able to pass this level today. However, despite this, Mansai Musashi Gen's little heart is almost unbearable at this moment. His current situation was not optimistic. He fell to the ground and was coughing up blood. Inu Murai and Sakuragi Haruaki quickly walked up and helped him up. Sakuragi Sime even gave him the most precious healing medicine to drink. "Let's go," Mansai Musashi Gen said in a low voice. He was at the end of his strength, but the bigger crisis was not this. Mansai Musashi Gen raised his head. The seal behind him was about to collapse. Once the seal collapsed, he would have no way to control the soul boys in these evil gods' bodies based on his current situation. But now, we can't get out. Once Meng Xing entered, they could only leave after the time was up. They came in later than Su Tong and his group, and they had to wait at least 10 minutes longer if they wanted to go out. Find a place to hide first. Mansai Musashi Gen could no longer care about cursing, so he asked Inu Murase to carry him on his back and hide in the corridor. On the other side, after Su Tong and his group came out, they looked up and found 4 people standing on the stairs. Bang! Before Su Tong could say anything, he heard a bang behind him and saw Guo Xiang falling to the ground, twitching and foaming at the mouth. Su Tong and the others hurriedly stepped forward. The eldest princess felt her pulse, and then asked Su Tong to give her a 5-spirit pill. There should be no big problem. Let's take her back first. Wait, you take her back, I want to enter the cave again. Su Tong had no intention of going back at this time. He took out the nightmare bone ring and put it on his finger. Nightmare bone ring. The carrier can enter and exit the cave world at any time. Active Skill 1, Overcast. By consuming 200 script points you can forcefully enter and leave the cave world at a specific place. Boss, are you going to? Gu Zibai understood what Su Tong meant. Su Tong nodded, and his face that was already full of flesh suddenly became even more hateful, with murderous intent in his eyes. While you are sick and I want to kill you, that old guy will definitely not think that I will come back. Take this opportunity to kill them. If he could take this opportunity to directly kill that old guy Wanzai, then he would be a sure winner in this team competition. Although this is more risky, how can you achieve great things without taking risks? Su Tong had already made up his mind, so it was imperative to go back this time. I will go with you. The eldest princess did not want Su Tong to be in danger alone. That old man Wanzai was by no means a fuel-efficient lamp. Su Tong made a false shot this time, but he was actually injured. With his talent, Su Tong had already used the time system. The prop card now has no life-saving trump card, and the princess is worried about letting him go in alone. It's okay. At worst, I'll invite the master's wife out. Since he was determined to kill the old guy Wanzai, Su Tong had made up his mind this time and would never hold back. The eldest princess had just fought 1 against 3, and now she was not in a good condition, so he didn't want the eldest princess to take risks with him. The eldest princess is also a decisive woman. Seeing that Su Tong already had a plan in mind, she stopped pestering her and just said, "Okay, I'll wait for you outside." This is a caring woman, not only good at fighting, but also very smart. They stood guard outside. If that old guy Wanzai escaped, they could set up an ambush outside. Head, are you back? However, at this moment, Li Bo's scream suddenly came from the team channel. Su Tong was stunned, wondering what kind of trouble this fat man had caused, and asked in the team channel, "What's wrong?" After hearing Su Tong's voice, Li Bo suddenly became excited and screamed, "Come and help me, a Japs has gone crazy. Our nest is about to be overthrown by him, and we can't withstand it at all." "What?" Su Tong was shocked and quickly asked Li Bo to explain what was going on. Li Bo sent a visual screenshot. When Su Tong took a look at it, his face turned completely dark instantly. "I saw the streets full of corpses, and a figure holding a paper fan broke into the Yuxing gang headquarters and started killing." This man looked unfamiliar, but Su Tong had seen the paper fan in his hand before, so he recognized it at a glance. This was the guy who took advantage of Xiaopang's tribulation last time. This guy chose this moment to break into the Yuxing gang and start killing people. The timing was really coincidental. Su Tong was caught in a dilemma for a moment. After a moment, he gritted his teeth and decided to kill Wanzai, an old man, today no matter what. No matter what the price, it was worth it. "You guys go back first to provide support." Su Tong signaled Gu Zibai and the eldest princess to rush back to support, and he contacted the other 2 members of Guo Xiang's team and asked them to go together to support the Yuxing gang. At the same time, he notified Li Bo to go to the church to report the news. Good. After the eldest princess expressed her understanding, she quickly took Gu Zibai back. Su Tong was still a little worried, so he simply slapped his forehead and asked the little fat man of the second spirit to go back with the eldest princess and the others. After all, the opponent's abilities are too weird, and his strength is definitely not ordinary. The eldest princess is injured, and Xiaopang himself feels more at ease. After they left, Su Tong turned the nightmare bone ring on his hand and activated the ring's ability to cross the overworld. Then the figure disappeared into the corridor. Not long after Su Tong's figure disappeared, he saw a sneaky figure walking out from the other end of the corridor. This man's whole body was shrouded in black shadows. He looked at Su Tong, the eldest princess and others after they separated into 2 groups. He looked around for a while and cursed, "This rubbish mission is really hard to do." After speaking, his eyes rolled around, just right, this may not be an opportunity. As he said this, he saw the man take out a small medicine bottle from his arms. The medicine bottle glowed with scarlet blood in the night. After much hesitation, the black shadow took the medicine bottle and walked to the upstream position, and then opened the cork of the medicine bottle. Along with it, a stream of red smoke floated out from the bottle. After a while, the red smoke covered the entire Kowloon. The city was enveloped. On the other side, when Su Tong entered the cave world again, the air was suddenly filled with a pungent smell of blood. The walls and floor were covered with blood-red claw marks. The crooked mark is like a silent curse, which makes people feel terrified. The rooms in the corridor were violently smashed, and many doors were torn down to only a doorframe. If you listen carefully, you can still hear the piercing screams in the building. The sound seems to be far away, but occasionally there will be a loud banging on the door, and you can conclude that it is not far away from you. I just left for a while, why did it become like this? Su Tong looked at the corridor in front of him and couldn't help frowning. He didn't know what was going on. But when he saw the smashed doors, he suddenly had a bad feeling in his heart. He immediately jumped out of the window of the corridor and came. Go to the first floor. Gao Zhou, how are you okay? Su Tong asked Gao Zhou while running towards room 404. Boss, why are you still here? Even on the team channel, Gao Zhou unconsciously lowered his voice. What happened? Su Tong asked Gao Zhou. I don't know, but these evil gods seem to be crazy. They seem to be looking for someone. Fortunately, there is no door in our room, otherwise we might have been discovered. Gao Zhou was glad in his heart at this moment that he and Chang Liuzhu had made the choice, otherwise he would have been in big trouble at this time. After Gao Zhou finished speaking, he wanted to ask Su Tong why he hadn't gone back yet, but he glanced at the window coldly, his pupils tightened instantly, and he stared at the only window in the room. Through the glass, you can vaguely see a crooked shadow lying on the window. Infinite script killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 860. Ah! Su Tong paused and suddenly heard a scream. Gao Zhou. Su Tong heard the sound and hurriedly called Gao Zhou on the team channel, but Gao Zhou did not respond. Broken. Worried that something might happen to Gao Zhou and Gu Zibai, Su Tong glanced at room 404 not far away, turned around decisively, jumped up to the fourth floor through the corridor window on the second floor, stepped on the corridor window, and stuck his head out. Take a look inside. The empty corridor was eerily quiet. Su Tong tiptoed down, his pupils flashing with golden light, and at the same time, the black water dragon fang was also held in the palm of his hand. Head, I'm fine. At this time, Gao Zhou's voice came from the team channel. Why didn't you tell me earlier if nothing happened? Su Tong was startled and said angrily. I dare not say, but that guy was lying on the window just now. I have a feeling that it can hear us talking. Gao Zhou's voice was very low, and when he thought of the shadow just now, he couldn't help but get goosebumps on his body. If I had continued talking, this guy might actually hear my voice. Thanks to the scream just now, he attracted this monster, otherwise he wouldn't know what to do. Looking back at Chang Liuzhu, who was sleeping like a dead pig, Gao Zhou immediately regretted it. If I had known that this was the case, I should have used that prop myself. After I used it, I lay down here, closed my eyes and opened them, vomiting. The mission was over, it felt so good just thinking about it. Knowing that Gao Zhou and Chang Liuzhu were fine, Su Tong was relieved. He threw many props purchased from Wanja's store into the team prop book and asked Gao Zhou to take them out as soon as possible. Although the functions of these props are very strange, for Gao Zhou and others, they are enough to save their lives at critical moments. But having said that, if Gao Zhou and the others were fine, where did that scream just come from? A strange laughter suddenly sounded in the originally dead corridor. It was an almost crazy laughter, wanton and arrogant and filled with twisted pain. Su Tong didn't feel unfamiliar with such a voice, because there were often such voices in the anti-lunatic asylum. In the words of doctors, these lunatics have completely lost control of their minds to make such distorted sounds. At this moment, the sound is slowly approaching him. Su Tong silently put away the black water dragon tooth in his hand, turned around and jumped out of the corridor window, lying under the window hiding his breath and waiting silently. The laughter was getting closer and closer, as if it was carrying some kind of terrible virus. Su Tong frowned, and black mold began to ooze under his skin. But he didn't dare to move because he had already heard the footsteps approaching. He looked sideways into the corridor and saw a twisted shadow walking step by step. It's him. After seeing this shadow clearly, Su Tong was suddenly shocked. In the dim corridor, an old man walked out in a crazy manner. Ha ha ha, I have become a god. I have become a god. With his distorted laughter, the surrounding walls began to corrode, and black blood seeped out from the cracks in the surrounding walls. It seemed that wherever he walked, these buildings would come alive. And this person is none other than Gen Mansai Musashi, whom he originally wanted to kill. What happened? How did he become like this? Su Tong frowned when he looked at this guy's appearance at the moment. The huge feet made a clicking sound on the ground with every step. This guy's body was horribly bloated, and his skin and flesh seemed to have been temporarily spliced together, with black lines running through them. The most tingling thing is that there are 4 people standing on this guy's body. No. To be precise, half a body. 1 woman and 3 men were the same 4 guys who had been parasitized by the shrine before. At this moment, the upper half of their bodies were firmly integrated with Mansai Musashigen. Now this guy is a total monster. It can only be said that if you make one wrong move, you will lose the whole game. Mansai Musashigen's strength is definitely not inferior to his own. Even before using a super killer weapon like the 9 Immortals Cauldron, Su Tong dare not say that he is sure of winning. It was just Su Tong's feint that caused Mansai Musashigen to step into the deep pit. He made a good calculation and went all out to get fatter. However, Su Tong did not follow common sense, feinted a shot, and ran away. Mansai Musashigen has never seen such a shameless person, a land god. Damn your grandma's legs. This time, Su Tong was not killed, but his vitality was severely damaged. He was unable to maintain the seal and was forced to run away. The original plan was for Sakuragi Sime and the others to redeem the key item Nightmare Bone Ring. Once the plan failed, they could use this item to quickly escape from here. Unfortunately, they arrived a step too late, allowing Su Tong, an owner who was not short of money, to wipe out all the props in Wanja Trading Company. This brought great variables to them. After these evil gods broke through the seal, they almost conducted a carpet-like search. How could outsiders like Mansai Musashigen and others escape? At the critical moment, Mansai Musashi Genmito wanted to devour Sakuragi Sime and Shushita Akamoto to regain his strength. But little did he know that these 2 guys had already sensed the danger from the eyes of Gen Mansai Musashi. As an excellent player, no matter how real the characters in the script world are, they are just a script to the players. Even if Sakuragi Sime is the most loyal core backbone of Onmyo Academy in reality, it is impossible for him to risk his life for an ancestor in the script world. So after the 2 realized something was wrong, they decisively used props and threw Mansai Musashigen directly to the evil gods who had lost control. Speaking of which, Mansai Musashigen is definitely the worst among the ancestors. But what everyone didn't expect was that not only did Gen Mansai Musashi not die, but with the help of the corpse of the ancient god behind him, he forcibly devoured these evil gods. And because the time flow rate in the cave sky and the outside world is different. When Su Tong re-entered, Mansai Musashigen had merged with these evil gods and missed the best opportunity to kill this guy. It hurts. Every time Mansai Musashigen took a few steps, he would hold his head and let out a low roar. On his back, 4 shrines were firmly embedded in his muscles. Black liquid continued to flow from the shrines, eating away at his sanity bit by bit. As the amount of black liquid increases, Mansai Musashigen's body gradually expands. Go away, go away. Ah! Mansai Musashigen waved his arms unconsciously, trying to expel the thoughts in his mind, but faced with the forced fusion of the 4 gods, Mansai Musashigen's energy could not expel them at all. Being able to persevere until now without completely losing himself is enough to show that this old guy's 600 years were not in vain. The more Mansai Musashigen resisted, the stronger the curse emanating from his body became. Gradually, the surrounding houses were covered with a thick layer of mold. This guy has such a strong will. Su Tong held the black water dragon fang eyes in one hand and stared at the shrine on this guy's back. If I make a sneak attack now, I might be able to take the opportunity to destroy the shrine unprepared. But doing so will definitely help Mansai Musashi General get rid of the control of the evil god, and if you let him take back the initiative, you will become more passive. Ah! Mansai Musashigen fell to his knees violently, roaring like a beast from his mouth. Every muscle in his body was twitching, and the bodies standing on his shoulders even pounced on him. She covered his mouth with both hands, covered his eyes, and crawled by his ears. Vicious curses turned into black bugs the size of rice grains and got into Mansai Musashigen's ears. Seeing this, Su Tong no longer hesitated. This guy doesn't know what will happen next. Once such an opportunity is missed, you don't know when the next time will be. Aha! Su Tong took action, with no extra skills and a gorgeous appearance. There was only a murderous aura that cut through the void and came in an instant. Dragon Breath. Active Skill 1, Dragon Breath. Single, consumes 300 script points. After activation, the next attack will ignore the opponent's defense and armor. The blood-red evil energy appeared on the black water dragon fang in his hand, and with the blessing of the blood-cursed whetstone, he slashed hard at one of the shrines. As if aware of the danger, the invisible force on the shrine autonomously tried to block the attack. However, due to the characteristics of the black water dragon fang, the blade completely ignored the opponent's defense and slashed hard on the shrine. Click. The blade effortlessly chopped the shrine into pieces, and at the same time chopped open a statue of a god that exuded a black aura inside the shrine. The moment the shrine was cut in half, the body of the monster that had been crawling and whispering in Mansai Musashigen's ear began to tremble violently. The figure whose upper body was covered with white cloth even let out a scream before his body began to decay rapidly. Before Su Tong could swing his second sword, the other 3 figures turned around and pounced on Su Tong. But at this moment, after Su Tong succeeded in the attack, he quickly retreated and distanced himself from Mansai Musashigen. It's you. Mansai Musashigen also saw the figure of Su Tong. As the saying goes, enemies are extremely jealous when they meet. He was still resisting these evil gods. The moment he saw Su Tong, he actually formed a unity with the evil gods in his body. In front of him, he opened his mouth and sprayed out a stream of grey air towards Su Tong. The 2 chi of yin and yang, together with the 3 guys on his back, cursed Su Tong in unison. The cursed gas hit Su Tong, and the effect of the 5 decays of heaven and man on Su Tong was triggered again, and a large amount of black mold quickly grew on his arms. Su Tong knew in his heart that it was too late for him to continue taking action. It seemed that the paper man in room 404 could only wait until next time. He immediately turned the nightmare bone ring on his hand and quickly disappeared from the cave.